All right, so Cobra to downward dog is just going back and forth between two different motions. So the first one's Cobra. Cobra, you're just gonna lay down, squeeze your shoulder blades back and down, and you're just gonna pull up here, get your chest up. You can also lengthen the neck, right? You should feel a stretch in kind of your abdomen, your lower back. Try to keep your hips on the ground. Don't let your hips come up. And try to avoid letting your shoulders shrug like this. Try to put them back and make a big chest. If this is too aggressive for you, you can go on your elbows and come up this way, right? So you're just gonna come up from Cobra, and then you're gonna make sure your toes are curled in and go into downward dog. So I'm just gonna walk back, get your butt up, keep your legs locked out, right? And then stretch out the back of the legs. So you're trying to keep your legs straight and trying to drive your heels into the ground, right? You might not be able to do that, but that's the direction you're going, right? Don't just walk up like this. Keep your hands kind of where they are and just think about pushing your hips back and lengthening the backs of your legs, right? You can stretch out here, you can stretch one calf at a time, right? Just try to find out where you're tight. And when all the blood's rushing to your head, just come back in to Cobra. You can stay here, you can add a push-up if you want, and just go back and forth. You can walk the hands a little bit if you want. It's just going back and forth, trying to find out where you're tight, what those areas are. You just kind of go back and forth through those two motions for 30 seconds to a minute or as long as you feel is necessary. And feel free to hang out in the downward dog or the Cobra as long as you need to. Just try to find out where those tight areas are and stretch them out. Okay, so alternating spider lunges or Spider-Man lunges are one of my favorite stretches to do pre and post workout. You're gonna start off on all fours. If you can, get up into a plank, right? Your knees off the ground, and you're gonna bring your foot wide and out to the side of your hand. Try to get your foot slightly in front of your knee, so not quite here, but try to go out here, and you're just gonna stretch. If you can, keep that back leg locked out as well, then come back to a plank, and then switch, right? Every time you come down, think about pushing that knee out a little bit, keeping this back leg locked out if you can, and sink into that stretch, and just switch. So you're only gonna hold each stretch for about a second or two, and it's gonna alternate, all right? Back, and then forth. You can kind of hang out here, find out where you're tight, push that knee out, right? If you don't have the mobility to come all the way up here like this, you might have to kind of come a little bit further back and sink into it a little bit. If you don't have the mobility, bring your foot up all the way up in front by your hand. If you have trouble keeping your knees off the ground, you can keep your knees on the ground and come up this way and stretch out this way, right? So just bring a foot up, stretch, and alternate. So either here or keep the legs locked out into a plank and come out wide like that, and just alternate for 10 to 15 reps or whatever the prescribed number of reps are. Okay, so there's different variations of the world's greatest stretch, but the one that we're gonna use today consists of 3 different movements. So the first one is we're in a deep lunge here, that spider lunge. I want that front foot slightly in front of the knee, and if you can, get this back leg locked out. Keep this foot straight and try to push this knee out a little bit. From here, we're gonna take our elbow, drive it in towards our opposite hand, get as low as you can so you can get your elbow to the ground. If not, just go as low as you can. And then you're going to reach up towards the ceiling and back down. So come down and up, down and up. So you're gonna do that for whatever number of repetitions you have to do, or sometimes it's, do that for 30 seconds or whatnot, right? If you have trouble keeping this back knee off the ground, you can drop the knee here and just work like this, right? But ideally, if you can get that back knee off the ground and feel a good stretch in that back hip, that's what you want, right? So that's the first part of the world's greatest stretch. The second part, you're gonna keep your feet right where they're at, and you're gonna do what I call hamstring variation. So you're gonna come back, sit back on your knee, lock this leg out, and stretch, trying to kind of get my chest to my knee, keeping this front foot flexed, right? You might not have the mobility to sit all the way back like this. You might just kind of be here, but try to go wherever you can lock out your legs. You get a better angle here. So you're gonna sit back, and then you come back forward to that stretch, that kind of Spider-Man lunge, and then go back, hang out here, and forth. So the purpose of this is to find out kind of where you're tight in your hamstring, and if you feel more tight here or here, just kind of hang out where you feel tight and just kind of go back and forth, right? The third part of the world's greatest stretch is called a Samson stretch, or a kneeling hip flexor stretch. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna be in this kneeling position again, and you're going to drive this hip forward, right? Think about keeping your tailbone pointed down, so squeeze the butt, and you're driving this hip forward. You feel a stretch right here. If you need a pad for your knee or anything like that, you can do that. And you want to stretch here, and then also reach up with both hands or the hand where your leg is back. So you can reach up here, and you feel a stretch all the way kind of through the side of the ribs and the obliques, all the way down to the front of the hip. And you can also come here like this, twist around, find out where you're tight. You can kind of oscillate back and forth a little bit. Try to keep that tailbone pointed down, and kind of squeeze your butt and drive this hip forward. You can kind of twist around, find out where you're tight. If you want to, you can even get this back knee off the ground if you're able to do that. And you're just gonna stretch here. So the whole point of this is you hit a lot of different areas in these 3 different stretches. You can hang out more on one than the other, find out where you're tight, but you can put them all together without moving much. So you can come through the first one here, right? And then come back here to the second one. And then you can go into the third one here, all right? So do it for the prescribed number of reps or the prescribed time. And if you want to spend more time on one or the other, find out where you're tight, stick there a little bit longer, you're more than welcome to do that. Okay, so the bird dog is a great, simple but effective warm-up exercise to warm up what we call the posterior chain, all the muscles in the back, and also work on some core stabilization. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna start on all fours, right? And what you're gonna do is alternate opposite arm and opposite leg, lifting it up almost like you're doing a Superman, right? Nice straight line, and then back down. And then you're going to switch, squeeze to the top, and back down. Make sure you don't do same arm, same leg. Right now we're going opposite arm, opposite leg. A few things, I want this thumb pointed up, right? I don't want your hand sideways. I want you to try to squeeze your shoulder blades back and get this arm up by your ear, all right? And then switch. On the back leg, I want you to really focus on squeezing your butt and keep that leg locked out. You should feel a little squeeze kind of in your glutes and a little bit in the hamstrings, and come back down, all right? So you're just gonna alternate, squeeze for a second, come back down. Make sure to keep your core tight. What I don't want you to do is arch a lot here, right? I want you to keep your core tight and think about having a straight line from your hand to your arm, down to your head, your spine, to your tailbone, all the way to the back of the leg and the foot. So you're just gonna alternate here, hold. Try to make sure you don't wobble or anything like that. And just alternate for 10 reps or the prescribed amount of time or repetitions. Okay, so a single leg RDL, which stands for Romanian Deadlift, is a single leg body weight or weighted single leg version of the Romanian Deadlift or the RDL. Really great for learning to stabilize our knees, working on foot strength, and of course strengthening our hips too, right? One at a time to correct any imbalances. So remember a hinge, right? With a deadlift or Romanian deadlift, we hinge by going butt back. It's not a squat. We sit our hips back. In this case, our back stays flat and our knees do not go forward. I can have a slight bend in my knees, but they don't go forward at all. I sit butt back like a robot, drive to the heels, and stand up. So that is a hinge motion of a Romanian deadlift. So single leg, you're gonna start off with our feet. You're gonna start off obviously on one leg, and you're doing that same motion just on one leg, all right? So with our feet, we wanna imagine that our foot is like a tripod with 3 points here, and we wanna use each of those points to really dig into the ground to help us balance, because our foot is what's gonna stabilize our knee and keep us from going all over the place, right? So make sure you can first stand on one leg. If you have trouble standing on one leg, then you're gonna want to take this easy and do some easier progressions, which I'm about to show you. And from here, I'm going to not reach for the ground, but I'm going to hinge and put my butt back, right? Sitting my butt back, kicking this leg back, and reaching for the ground as low as I can. If I can, I'm gonna go all the way to the ground. If I'm having trouble with this, I might just start off with a small hinge motion to where I feel comfortable. So it's not just where you feel comfortable as far as going low. A big thing is your knee, all right? Because we wanna make sure your knee can stay over the middle of your foot or even a little bit outside. So imagine like there's a wall on the outside of your knee and you kinda wanna push against it when you're coming down to make sure it doesn't cave in. So you might have the strength to go all the way down, right? But if you start coming down and your knee caves in, all right? First try to correct it, but if you're having trouble correcting that, I want you to go at a less range of motion. I want you to go shorter. So maybe only come down to here or halfway or wherever that is, to where you can keep your knee in a good stable position, right? So you're gonna come down as low as you can to where you can keep your knee in a good position and come up, all right? Also kick this back leg back, so I don't want you to reach here, but I want you to think about really kicking this back leg back, because that's gonna make sure you get a good hinge and keep your back nice and flat. So down and up, all right? Go a little bit slower on the way down, all right? Make sure you're nice and balanced. And when you get to the bottom, come up a little bit faster. And when you come up, don't think about standing up with your chest, but think about kicking your leg back, the leg that you're standing on, driving that heel, and kind of doing a kickback motion to use your glutes, your butt, and stand up. So I'm coming down, and I'm kicking this leg back, standing up. Down, and up, all right? If you need to hold on to something for balance, you can also do that as well, all right? But definitely take this motion slow at first. Make sure you feel comfortable with it. Make sure you can do a variation to where you can keep your knee in line. If you're wobbling all over the place, just take it slow, right? And go a little bit lower and lower until you go all the way to the ground. And then in the future, you might add some weights, etc. But this is a body weight version. We're looking for stretching and working on balance that you're going to do in a dynamic warm-up fashion, all right? So that's a single leg RDL. Play with it, start off very slow, be very careful, and make sure to ease into a variation that you feel comfortable with, and then progress over time.